10 reasons you wouldn't want to live in the Middle Ages. Number 10. The monotonous and dangerous food. If you're a food lover, the Middle Ages would be your worst nightmare. For the vast majority of the population, that is, the peasants, the diet was incredibly bland and repetitive. It was based on oatmeal gruel, hard, dark bread, and whatever vegetables they could grow, like cabbages and turnips. Meat was an extraordinary luxury, reserved for feudal lords or very special festivities. The idea of having exotic spices, tropical fruits, or even a simple potato or tomato was completely unthinkable, as those foods had not yet arrived in Europe. But monotony wasn't the only problem. The food was often dangerous. Preservation methods were primitive, relying on salting, drying, or smoking. This often failed, meaning people regularly consumed spoiled meat or fish. Bread could be contaminated with ergot, a fungus that grows on rye and causes a terrible disease called ergotism, which led to hallucinations, gangrene, and an agonizing death. In the Middle Ages, every meal was a gamble, a risk of going hungry or being poisoned by your own food. Number 9. The total absence of comforts. Forget central heating, electricity, running water, or a comfortable mattress. Daily life in the Middle Ages was a constant struggle against the elements and discomfort. Peasant homes were one-room huts built of mud, wood, and straw. The floor was packed earth, and smoke from the cooking fire constantly filled the space, as chimneys were a luxury of the rich. You shared this small, dark place with your family, and often with your animals as well, to protect them from the cold and from thieves. Night brought a near-total darkness, broken only by the weak flame of a tallow candle, which was expensive and smelled awful. The cold in winter was penetrating and deadly, and people huddled under rough woolen blankets to survive. There was no privacy, no silence, no moment of true physical comfort. Life was an endless cycle of grueling physical labor from dawn to dusk, only to return to a home that offered minimal shelter from a harsh and unforgiving world. Number 8. Brutal justice and the trial by ordeal. If you had a legal problem in the Middle Ages, you couldn't expect a fair trial with a lawyer and a jury. The legal system was brutal, arbitrary, and based on superstition. Torture was a common and accepted tool to obtain confessions, regardless of whether the accused was guilty or not. Methods like the rack, the iron boot, or the breaking wheel were standard techniques to make someone admit to any crime. Even worse was the concept of trial by ordeal. To prove your innocence, you might be forced to carry a red-hot iron in your hands for a certain distance, or to retrieve a stone from a pot of boiling water. If your wounds healed cleanly within a few days, God had declared you innocent. If they became infected, you were guilty and faced a gruesome execution, such as being hanged, burned at the stake, or beheaded. Justice was not based on evidence, but on power, superstition, and the ability to endure inhuman pain. Number 7. Constant violence and endless war. The Middle Ages was one of the most violent eras in human history. Peace was the exception, not the norm. Society was structured for war, with a class of knights and feudal lords whose main purpose was to fight. Disputes over land, inheritances, or simple insults could lead to bloody conflicts that ravaged fields, burned villages, and massacred innocent peasants caught in the crossfire. In addition to wars between lords, there was the constant threat of invaders, like the Vikings in the early Middle Ages, or raids from enemy armies. Cities and towns were walled for a reason. To step outside those walls was to risk being attacked by bandits, marauding soldiers, or a rival lord. Life had very little value, and violent death was an everyday possibility for everyone, from the humblest peasant to the most powerful king. Number 6. The feudal system and the lack of freedom. The vast majority of the medieval population, over 90%, were serfs. This means they were not free. A serf was born on a feudal lord's land and was legally bound to that land for the rest of their life. You could not leave without the lord's permission, you could not marry without his permission, and you even had to give him a significant portion of everything you produced. In essence, your life did not belong to you. You were the property of the lord of the land. social mobility was practically non-existent. If you were born a peasant, you died a peasant, and your children would inherit that same life of servitude. There was no chance of improving your situation through hard work or talent. You were trapped in a rigid and oppressive system that dictated every aspect of your existence, from what you ate to whom you served. The idea of personal freedom, of choosing your own destiny, was a completely alien and revolutionary concept. Number 5. Non-existent hygiene in pestilential cities. Prepare for an assault on your senses. Hygiene in the Middle Ages was, from our perspective, absolutely appalling. There were no sewage systems. Human and animal waste was thrown directly into the streets, where it mixed with mud and food scraps. Medieval cities were labyrinths of narrow, filthy, and foul-smelling streets, a perfect breeding ground for all kinds of germs. The rivers that flowed through cities were used as dumps and sewers. At the same time, they were used as a source of water for drinking and washing. Bathing was a very infrequent activity. People could go for months or even longer without a full bath. It was believed that hot water opened the pores and allowed diseases to enter the body. People were infested with fleas, lice, and other parasites. The stench of sweat, dirt, and disease was a constant in daily life. To live in a medieval city was to live immersed in filth, a factor that directly contributed to the spread of deadly diseases. Number 4. Primitive medicine and unavoidable pain. If you fell ill or were injured in the Middle Ages, you were pretty much on your own. Medicine was based on the ancient Greek theory of the four humors, which postulated that illnesses were caused by an imbalance of blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile in the body. The most common treatment for almost any ailment was bloodletting, the act of draining blood from the patient, which often weakened them further or killed them outright. The concept of germs or anesthesia did not exist. Any surgical procedure, from the amputation of a leg to the extraction of a tooth, was performed with the patient fully conscious, often held down by force while they screamed in pain. Tools were not sterilized, so post-operative infection was almost certain and usually fatal. A simple broken bone, a dental infection, or childbirth could easily become a death sentence. Physical pain and suffering were constant companions in everyone's life. Number 3. The terrifying infant mortality rate. One of the most heartbreaking realities of medieval life was the incredibly high infant mortality rate. It is estimated that between 30% and 50% of all children did not live to see their 5th birthday. Diseases that are easily preventable or curable today, such as measles, diarrhea, or a simple respiratory infection, were lethal for babies and young children. Parents lived with the near absolute certainty that they would lose several of their children. It was so common that many didn't even name their babies until they were sure they would survive the first few weeks or months. This constant tragedy shaped the emotional structure of the family and society. Childhood was a period of extreme danger, not innocence, and the loss of a child, while painful, was an expected and normal part of life. Number 2. The short and brutal life expectancy. If you managed to survive the perils of childhood, your reward was not a long and prosperous life. The average life expectancy in the Middle Ages was around 30 to 35 years. If you made it to 40, you were already considered old. This doesn't mean no one lived longer, but the average was terrifyingly low due to the lethal combination of all the factors we've mentioned: war, famine, disease, lack of hygiene, and ineffective medicine. Life was a race against time. There was no quiet retirement to look forward to. People worked until their bodies gave out or until an illness or injury killed them. Old age was seen as a state of decrepitude and suffering, not of wisdom and rest. The omnipresence of death shaped people's mentality, fostering both a deep fatalism and a religious fervor focused on the promise of a better life after death. Because life on earth was, for most, short, painful, and brutal. Number 1. The Black Death, the apocalypse on Earth. If there is a single reason to be thankful you didn't live in the Middle Ages, it is this: the Black Death. Between 1347 and 1351, this horrific plague, caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis and transmitted by rat fleas, swept through Europe, Asia, and Africa, killing an estimated 75 to 200 million people. In Europe, it wiped out between 30% and 60% of the entire population. It was, literally, the apocalypse on Earth. The symptoms were terrifying. The sick developed high fevers and delirium, followed by the appearance of buboes, painful, swollen lymph nodes in the neck, armpits, and groin, which would turn black and ooze pus and blood. Death usually came within days. Society disintegrated. Doctors could do nothing. Priests died alongside their parishioners, and people abandoned their own families for fear of contagion. The Black Death was not just a public health catastrophe. It was a total collapse of civilization, a psychological trauma so profound that it changed the course of history and stands as the bleakest and most terrifying reminder of the horrors of medieval life.
Thank you for watching our video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Give it a like, comment your thoughts, and share this video with your friends and family.